Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to pay attention to. It is the day where democracy rules. People go to the polls, cast their vote. I did my share. I got out and voted today. Hopefully my local school board won't go nuts. Hopefully the insaniacs the Moms for Liberty are in my neighborhood too. So hopefully they will not take over the local public schools and, do the kind of destruction that, only they can do. But look, lots of things to watch. Lots going on. Ohio front and center with the abortion issue and issue 1 and legal pot. Interesting to see how that will go. Early numbers in kind of where we were expecting. The abortion issue 1, about 60-40 with early returns. And the pot issue running a little bit behind that. Virginia also going to be a place because abortion is kind of front and center this election cycle. Going to be interesting to see how the legislature swings in Virginia, and if Virginia is okay, with a 15-week abortion ban. This is kind of the litmus test of what the legislature, if it's a Republican legislature, that's what you're getting, and it also could mean that Glenn Youngkin could be the late entrant into the Republican presidential primary, because now he's going to have a mandate at home and a way forward to try and quell some of the anti-abortion stuff, because they got to figure out a way to uncatch the car, to where the dog uncatches the car and they solve this issue. And then, of course, to use it again in the future for fundraising. And then, look, there's Mississippi, the governor's race down there. I'm not hopeful, but, maybe we'll see. But the big one already, Kentucky. I was expecting a late night in Kentucky. It's already been called that incumbent governor Andy Beshear will be reelected. Now, just yesterday, the polling all said dead heat, 47-47. Neck and neck. And that's not what it's turned out to be. In fact, 30 minutes after the polls closed, they called, you had people calling the election, because it's the numbers are, I think it's like 56. Beshear's got like 56% at this point. Not the 47 we were expecting. And what got me today, and this is one of these moments where you go, when do we stop paying attention to these polls? I mean, everyone's got a poll now. Every college has got a poll. There's online polls. There's this poll. There's that poll. Joe's got a poll. Mary's got a poll. They all got polls. And, most of them are garbage. Most of them just play into this frame of the horse race. And look, we talked about a poll yesterday. The Siena College poll said Biden's losing in 5 of the 6 battleground states. And I said, look, the reason that I brought it up is I hope Democrats pay attention to that. I hope they go, oh my gosh, we're losing in battleground states. We should do better. Not to throw up our hands and go, it looks like it's over. No, do better. Maybe don't do what Hillary Clinton didn't do, and maybe go to places. Maybe get out there and knock on doors and kiss babies and press the flesh and do the hard work of campaigning. Maybe that's what we need to do, because here's the weird thing. And I come back to, and we're going to talk about this, quite frequently in the coming days, weeks, and months. The fact of the matter is, and this is what's being sold to us. In fact, a new poll. It's a blueprint YouGov poll. I don't even know who the hell Blueprint is, but they've got a poll. And what they are saying is that, President Biden attempting, to use the job numbers as his selling point. No, it's not helping. It's not helping because people have all these jobs. They're concerned about inflation. That's the real thing. And that's the narrative that we're being sold, isn't it? That all these voters are angry and disgruntled and look, we aren't even in the presidential campaign season yet. We're not. The Biden camp hasn't really made their argument. Not even opening statements yet. So it's easy to have what we see in front of us. All these polls and all of this anger and all of this angst because you have a right-wing media in this country that wakes up every morning bright and early, give them credit, and they stay up late at night. And their only purpose is to sow seeds of dissent, is to make people angry at every turn, is to pit people against each other. And of course, outrage merchants, it sells. Anger sells, fear sells, outrage sells. It does. Because, we don't want to hear happy stories. We don't want to hear people doing well. No, we want misery. We want other people to be miserable. At least that's what it seems. Because if you listen to the right-wing outrage merchants and the stories that they tell, it's all, you're getting screwed. They're taking your tax dollars and you're getting nothing for it. They're just giving it to those people over there. And look, social media is full of this stuff. And again, it's what people are throwing out there. No, look, the job numbers are good. We've got really low unemployment. It's true. If we had a stronger labor movement, if we had more people, a higher union density, if we had labor laws that encourage people to join and form unions, I would argue the wages would be higher faster. And corporate America would be maybe held in check a little bit, and this inflation wouldn't be running as rampant. But this is where we are. We're in a moment where we're being sold by all of this special interest, all of these people who their lives and their careers and their attention is based on, whatever polling that they can dream up. And the more you read through this stuff, the more you realize that most of it's garbage. And I use them to go, hey, look, this is what's being said. Here's why they're generally wrong. And like yesterday, I brought up the Siena College poll. Yeah, they're losing all these battle states. And I used it as the example of get out there and do some work. Get out there and hustle more. Tell your story. And to point out the fact that the right wing controls and the moneyed interests control the vast majority of everything we see, hear, and read. So am I surprised that some of these snap polls online, some of these, online surveys are angry people? No, because those are the people who are online. The people who are out there living their lives, they seem to be doing okay. And maybe we should spend more time thinking about them and less time thinking about the Blueprint poll, which I've never heard of Blueprint. I hope somebody will update me on who the Blueprint people are. But, like the Bashir thing, it was a dead heat, and it was over within a half an hour. And that's a good thing. Today could be a good sign and make all of those polls irrelevant. Because if the Democrats sweep in on the issues that look, are important, maybe this is the sign for 2024, which is why you're seeing Republicans who are, looking for somewhere out. Now, today, the good news out of the Biden folks, 150th judge was confirmed. That's a pretty good bit of work. And as I say about Biden, the guy shows up, does his job. And that's what I like about him, just out there doing the job. Here's my problem. We have a Republican legislature. We have a Republican Congress who they're not doing their thing. And what that means is in, 10 days now? Was it 10 days? 10 days, we're looking at a potential government shutdown. We're looking at, chaos. The people in the House who don't seem to understand what it means to govern are driving the car right into the ditch. And they want to stand for election and say, hey, vote for us. November 17th is coming very quickly. And, 45 days, 35 days ago, it seemed like a long time. We got plenty of time. The adults in the room are going to solve this. We're not going to have to worry before Thanksgiving that, all. But now they're talking about, no, we're going to try something different. We're going to have a staggered shutdown. What they call it, a laddered continuing resolution, where they're going to shut down certain parts of the government. The parts that they really don't like, like the ones that feed children and feed the homeless and help seniors. Yeah, I'm going to get those first. How do we get so crazy? I mean, how do we get to this place? I know it comes back to voting, and it comes back to who we put into the halls of power, who we elect as our leaders. We got to do better. And this is why, this next year is going to be very important. Because I fear Republicans have been doing their foolhardy best to cause a recession. The only way they have a chance next November is if there's major economic chaos, or if they can convince enough people that their lives are horrible. If they can convince enough people that, Joe Biden caused all this inflation. And inflation has been coming down, and it's come down off of the high, which was predictable. You can't shut down an economy and then just flip the switch and it all go back to the way it was. You can't have a major crisis like a pandemic and expect things to go right back the way they were. But we're Americans, and we expect things to be, neat and quick, and in a nice little bag and handed out a window. So it makes me wonder what the rest of the day's numbers are going to be. But I want to hear your thoughts. Did you get out and vote today? Did you have an opportunity to exercise that little bit of power that each citizen has to engage in this wonderful experiment of self-governance? And what kind of experiment and what kind of experience was it? Or did you get harassed and harangued and got an ID, or is this you, or any of that? I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Gotta tell you, I love election. I love election time. I love the idea that as a country, we come together and we say, you know what, we're going to choose our people, and we're gonna get our ideas and our thoughts and our hopes and our dreams and our wants. This is how we are going to address them. Now, look, for too long we've been voting for some of the wrong folks, but I still have hope. And every election day, I think that this could be the moment when American working people wake up and go, you know what, we're going to change things. We're going to make things better. We're going to use our power of the vote to change our little piece of the world and ultimately change the world. Let's go to the phones. We got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are you today?
I am tired. I have been busy today.
Did you get out and vote?
That's a silly question. Of course I did. But what I wanted to say was, I noticed a difference in the atmosphere in my little hamlet today. We weren't quite as crazy as we have been in the previous one.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, and I actually had a wonderful conversation with 2 Republicans. And one of them actually agreed with me, because I don't even know how we get on the subject now, But I brought up about, I said, religion has no place in government or politics or schools. The only place it has a place at is church and in your personal life.
Yep.
And they were like, absolutely. What if you're a Methodist and they're saying, well, only Lutherans? And I said, absolutely. So I thought, well, hey, maybe a couple of people have sobered up from the Trump drunk. I don't know.
No, and this is where having these conversations are very important, Alice. And I always give you credit for being willing to engage in the verbal jousting that sometimes happens with folks of the other hat color. And I think that's a good thing. I think we need to be doing more of that.
Well, we do. And then they were like, you need to run for council. And I said, trust me, nobody would be happy with me on council.
Well, I'll tell you this: if you run for council, I'll write you the first donation to help get you started.
Well, I'll let you know. How's that then?
There you go. Good for you,
All right,
Alice.
have a good evening.
No, look, we need people who are going to run for public office, not just people who can raise money. I mean, this has been my problem with elections for a very long time. Because for a while here, I've had people who bugging me, going, "You should run for Congress. You should run for House. You should run for all this stuff." And I'm going, no, I shouldn't, because I'm not going to be able to raise the kind of money that you need to compete. Now, if you had publicly funded elections where money wasn't the issue, issues being the issue, then yeah, that's a game I'm willing to jump in the middle of. That's something I'm willing to throw my hat in the ring in and maybe take a beating over. But ideas should matter more than your ability to raise money. And these elections, they are really freaking crazily expensive, and too much so. This is why I've always thought that we should have on the airwaves an amount of time that goes to each candidate that gives them the ability to get their message out. That funding should be coming from the tax base to say, hey, let's see who runs the best campaign with this kind of funding. Not who can go and get into a billionaire's pocket or into some dark money group's pocket and fund huge campaigns, but who builds the best mousetrap, who's got the best idea, who's got the best policies, who actually wants to govern. I mean, this is the other part of this, and I think what we've seen over the last several months is we have a Republican Party right now. You look at the House, that does not know how to govern, because they've told themselves for so long that government is the problem and they should do nothing, that they don't know what to do when they are in charge. And it's turned into, just building their little stardom. We want attention. And, I had someone email me a story today that made me chuckle, because I hadn't really thought about it until this person emailed me and said, hey, have you heard from Marjorie Three Names lately? Have you heard from, Marjorie Taylor Greene? And I'm going, come to think about it, not really. Or Gun Fetish Barbie. Haven't heard from either one of them. They've been kind of a little toned down, at least in the worlds that I'm looking. And it's like, yeah, you know why? Well, she tied her horse to the wrong wagon. Kevin McCarthy was her guy. She was all in. And now you've got, he's out of power. The Freedom Caucus has lost their minds. And here she is with basically no home, and having been, for the most part, ostracized from her former group of crazy people in the House Freedom Caucus. And the rank and file Republicans already hated her. So there isn't much of a home for her left. And it will be interesting to see if she's able to, to rebuild herself, because, she's one of those people who always figures out how to get attention. But no, I haven't been seeing much of her lately. And that's a good thing. And because Alice just sparked something there. And, it could we be in a turning point moment? Because come to think about it, I went to my polling place today, and it wasn't lunacy. Granted, it wasn't crowded. I walked right in. There were plenty of machines. I waited for all of 7 seconds, and got to cast my vote and go get my sticker. In fact, not only did they give me a sticker, they gave me 2. I get one now, and I have one for later. And look, my wife and I have always taken our children to vote. She got up bright and early, right at the crack of, oh my God, it's early, and took the kids over before school. And it's my day off. I got in a little bit later than normal, but still got in. It's one of those things. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Steve on line 1. Steve, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And hopefully I'm not repeating anything you've already said. I'm just jumping in the car here. But, I mean, there are a number of races that are sort of, I think, a precursor to where the country is that are going on today. And hopefully we'll get some good results. As I understand, the Democrat has been reelected in Kentucky as governor. So, I mean, I do think that we are perhaps, we have crossed the Rubicon, as it is, in terms of Trumpism. I'm not arguing that MAGA is dead, but I will say that I think that it has crested in terms of its power block, and I think that they can't go anywhere but down. And as we've discussed before, I mean, people aren't terribly enamored with Joe Biden. I mean, none of us who voted for him were. I think in 2020, he was the safe candidate. You needed, let's face it, a middle-of-the-road white male to run against Donald Trump. And that, in order to safely remove that cancer from the body politic that was America. Now, he wasn't anybody's idea of the greatest candidate, but he surprised a lot of us. We've seen a lot of progressive policies come out of the Biden administration, in spite of the fact that he didn't have the most loyal backing in the Senate, and the fact that he's lost now the House in terms of the last 2 years. So, yeah, I do think that, we are looking at MAGA as sort of in the rearview mirror. Again, it's not dead, and I could be wrong with regard to where things go, because a year from now, when we're going to the polls, things could look entirely different, because there's that X factor. Is there a war in the Middle East that comes out of this Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Do we descend into that recession that we've been promised for so long? Do we get unemployment rates that are in the 4s and 5s and going up? Because, that's inevitably what happens when you raise interest rates. That's the whole point of it, is to push up inflation so that you can tap down salaries. And, there are a lot of people who have a problem with that, from a working class standpoint, that, okay, this is a great philosophy on the part of the Fed that benefits the rich, but what does it do for average people? So, again, I don't know what the X factors are, but I do think that America is ready to move on beyond Trumpism, and the only question now is, okay, who will it move on to?
That is a good question. Appreciate it, Steve. Thanks so much. Spot on. And look, I'm hoping Steve's right. I'm hoping we are moving on. I'm hoping we're going in a direction where something better comes. But the fear is we end up with someone like Glenn Youngkin. And I've always said that, Trump is bad. But what happens if you normalize that kind of insanity? If you normalize the kind of craziness that comes out of his mouth and put it into somebody like Mike Johnson, who's kind of frightening? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
I'm Rick
Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1996. That was the day the United Steelworkers and Bridgestone Firestone finally reached a tentative settlement after a bitter 28-month dispute. After years of restructuring and decline, the company demanded massive concessions from the workforce. By July 1994, 4,000 members of the United Rubber Workers walked off the job at 5 plants across the country. They were on strike against wage and benefit cuts, the loss of holidays and union protections. They also rejected the company's attempt to institute a grueling 12-hour, 7-day work week and a 2-tier wage scale. The company permanently replaced more than half of the workforce 6 months into the strike. When the NLRB was slow to answer numerous unfair labor practice complaints, the United Rubber Workers called off the strike the following May. The company refused to reinstate hundreds of strikers, including 2 local presidents fired for union activity. Those who did return came back to plants filled with scabs. Though the strike may have ended, a campaign for justice continued when the United Rubber Workers merged with the United Steelworkers. Historian Robert Weir notes that in launching its international campaign, the United Steelworkers publicized the company's pollution problems, its safety and health violations, and intolerable working conditions. It also forged an important link with a militant Japanese union Zenroiko, raising fears that the strike could spread to Bridgeport's home operations. Protests, demonstrations, and boycotts continued throughout 1996 until the NLRB finally answered unfair labor practices brought against the company. The final settlement included the rehiring of all strikers, a wage increase, and all workers' original demands except one. Production speed up would continue.
Hear it? What's that sound? Ooh, it's Washington's revolving door, allowing corporate interests to come directly inside Congress to pervert public policy. That door is now spinning fast because there's a new boss operator in Congress. He's Mike Johnson, who was recently unanimously chosen by Republicans to be their Speaker of the House. He's a corporate wet dream, an affable ultra-conservative from Shreveport who consistently backs the plutocratic agenda of big business over workers, the poor, consumers, and most other Americans. Moreover, Johnson maintains it was God who elevated him to his new position of authority, and that the Bible will guide his policy views. Well, selected parts of the Bible. Don't expect much mercy, justice, and peacemaking from this hardcore laissez-faire ideologue. For example, guess who he's chosen to be his director of policy? Big Pharma's top Washington lobbyist. Dan Ziegler has been the chief influence peddler for a dozen multi-billion-dollar drug giants, including Eli Lilly, Merck, and Pfizer. Ziegler has furiously opposed every legislative effort to stop the rampant price gouging, even though 90% of Americans are clamoring for Congress to clamp down on pharmaceutical ripoffs. But we 90%ers don't control the revolving door. Mike does. Johnson piously cloaks himself in both the Christian gospel and libertarian myth of free markets, yet he has consistently pushed government action to restrict competition and protect drug monopolies. Now, in his first substantive action as Speaker, he is literally bringing Big Pharma inside to sit with him in the seat of legislative power. This is Jim Hightower saying drug pricing reform will soon come up for a vote in Congress. Before Mike's lobbyist buddy tells him what to do, let's demand that he reread the Sermon on the Mount.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Looking at the early win in Kentucky, and look, Andy Beshear ran on infrastructure, ran on making lives better, and the debate clips that I saw, really took his opponent to school, really made him look bad, and look, you need a governor who's going to make lives better, and for me, that's what politics is about. That's what moving. Getting people into these positions who believe in governing, who want to govern, who believe that they can make lives better, and actually have policies. For instance, we got a president who, first time probably in my lifetime, an industrial policy. And oddly enough, kind of works. Some folks in Ohio very happy jobs are coming to town. Here to share some thoughts on the industrial policy and what kind of working it is doing. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, great to be with you.
So let's start with Kentucky. I mean, you got the governor race that, just yesterday, the polling said dead heat, dead even. We're going to be up till late, to the wee hours, figuring out who wins this one. And, well, it was over within a half an hour. Yeah. But Beshear ran on infrastructure, didn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, there'll obviously be a lot to unpack, and there'll be all sorts of exit polls and hot takes and what have you. But when you look at fundamentally some of the economic policy, yeah, I mean, he proposed, I think, the largest new investment in Kentucky's history in infrastructure, was a willing participant with all of the federal funds coming in and expanding broadband. And so if you can deliver the goods for people, that's a check mark. So, and it's interesting, just goes to show you when you strip away all of the personalities or the figures that get wrapped up into this, the policies that a lot of Democrats have to run on are super, super popular. And so, there's a long way between now and next November, obviously, and a lot of other factors that will be in play too, Rick. But there's an awful, you want to be operating from a position of strength as a country, as a political party, as a state, as a community. And right now, by and large, things are good from a macroeconomic perspective. Interest rates are high. Yes, that is true. But even with all of that, there is a massive amount of investment and building for the future that's going to make us more prosperous, that's happening in Kentucky and in other states around the country as well.
I mean, I look at Ohio. I mean, Ohio is going to be like the chip capital of the world once they're done. Because there's I've got my producer lives in Columbus, and he's like, look, there's tons of investment going on here. There's tons of money being spent right now to bring these jobs and this industry to this state. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it, I mean, Intel alone, that investment's going to be $20 billion, okay? The scale of that in central Ohio is almost unthinkable, kind of the kind of impact that will have. And, and this is the type of investment that means you're building something, there's going to be skilled workers who are there, thousands of skilled workers, and that's going to create the need essentially for a community college, like an entire community college, basically, for providing those skills. And then you'll have the upstream and the downstream suppliers, and you'll have all of the indirect, benefits of that. And the scale of this is also that, this is going to be put into place, over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so this is going to be durable. This isn't just like, a booster shot and then it's done, right? I mean, this is something that's going to be there for generations and is going to make a big difference. And that Intel example, in the suburbs of Columbus is just one for semiconductors, where you're going to see upstate New York that's going to be transformed, and other areas of the country as well. And these are areas of the country that have, seen not a lot of investment, Rick, over the last couple of years. In fact, they've seen a lot of deindustrialization. And so this kind of flips the script, and it's going to be interesting to see how folks respond to this. I guess both politically, but I mean, we know just from our own polling and from what we've seen is that if you strip names off of things like Biden, Trump, whatever, I mean, these investments are enormously popular, wildly popular.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because then you look at this stuff that's happening, and as I said at the beginning, the first time in my lifetime that we've had an industrial policy based on ensuring that we start bringing jobs home and investing in a future of manufacturing here at home. How come Biden hasn't gotten any credit for this? When you look at the polling, and like I just got done talking that most of the polling is garbage, but when you look at the polling out there, he's not getting credit for the unemployment rate being what it is, not getting credit for the investments that are being made, and in fact, a lot of times, people are saying that the investment was already done before him, and he gets none of that credit. I mean, it's a bizarre world we live in.
Yeah, it is. It seems like all the good news gets squeezed out of the cloth, right? I mean, it's just and all you get is the crisis, or the making political hay out of issues, or the Trump saga just dominating a lot of the conversation as well. And I know from the polls that we've done, and it is surprising that there's a huge chunk of people who don't even know there was an infrastructure investment that was passed that was transformational, $1.2 trillion. And when you ask them, even though the scale of construction of new factories is the largest ever measured, and we've been measuring it since 1964. So you think about that, that's over the last 50, almost 60 years, basically, the largest ever, within the last year. Most people say they haven't heard any news about factories coming to their area or even to the country, even though we know there are not only dozens of them, there are many, many hundreds of them that are going into place all over the country. And so it does, I almost feel like, I wish we had tens of millions of dollars, not to act as a PR agent on behalf of any political candidate, but just to say, these policies are working, in your own community.
Yep.
And if you're looking for a manufacturing job, there's never been a better time, and you're negotiating from a position of strength. And these are great jobs, and they're going to be transformative to every community that they're in, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I had a caller, point out that, one of the things Obama didn't. One of the pieces of advice Biden gave Obama was to not hurry up to the next thing, but to sell the accomplishments that they had done. And he said, look, Biden's got to take his own advice and not keep moving on to all of the stuff because it's a lot of stuff he's done, but maybe go back and start selling some of this stuff. Like I said yesterday, there was a $16 billion investment in Amtrak, which got just a press release. Why aren't there events? Why aren't there big giant signs? Biden did this. Why aren't we seeing that?
Yeah. It's look, I'm not doing the White House's strategy. I'm not in charge of what TV stations are covering or anything like this, but it is curious because, and this is my hunch. All right, this is my hunch. This is my intuition, is that this is so non-controversial that it just makes it uninteresting in the time of quick hits on social media or in the news. Right? I mean, it's like you want a villain, you want a he said, she said scenario or something like that. And this is just, unmitigated good news that's happening. And I don't know that sells, anymore. And it's a damn shame that it really doesn't, because it is truly remarkable. But I think what Andy Bashir showed, and again, there's a lot of other stuff there, but that at the local level, you can make this work. You can definitely make this work if you lean into it and you make it your own issue. And so there still is that possibility, but because the policy is done, translating that into awareness and making that also part of like a value system, I think is important, because we're building for the future sounds a lot better than like the bipartisan infrastructure law or something like that.
No, you got that right. You listen to the Rick Smith Show, or with Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. Make sure you check out their work. You brought up Bashir and the kind of good things. Immediately, I'm waiting to find out. He's now being pushed to run for president. He won one election, another election in Kentucky, and now we're going to put him to the front of the. Let's get him to replace Biden.
I don't even know what to say. Yeah, it's the hot takes kind of run wild on election night, don't they? And if you pile them up, and if you look at all the ones that were made in the past, there may be one that turns out to be good.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of hours to fill on cable news. It just is what it is. But here's the thing, and again, I go back to the fact that Biden and I said this earlier, that the reality is he wasn't my first choice, but he's shown up and he's done the job, and we're seeing these kind of investments because of the infrastructure bill, because of the investments. And solar being a big part of this. And then you sent me a story earlier that said, look, you've got these firms coming into the U.S. building these huge solar farms. Maybe going to help us with our climate issues. Maybe going to help us get cheaper energy. Maybe help. Yeah, that's right. And there's a great story here, because 10 years ago, solar companies were going bankrupt in this country because they didn't have the policy support. And they were getting swamped by imports. Okay, and so they were just going bankrupt, and they were leaving this country. And the policy did not work that the Rescue Act in 2009 tried to put in place. Just didn't work. Okay, and so this is completely flipped now, and there's tariffs on these Chinese imports, and there will be tariffs on some other imports as well. And there's this massive investment that's been made. And unsurprisingly, companies are coming back, and they're locating production here because, we're an enormous energy consumer, and there's a great market right here in the United States. And so you've seen dozens of factories announce they're going to, open up all over America, in Ohio, but also, in the South, in the West, all over the place. And, $8 billion in private investment and more to come. And it's one of those things, again, that is because, it was a controversial political issue, people focus on that rather than what the results are, which are, great across the board for the United States. And so it is the wrong thing to do, I think, would be to listen to folks who want to get rid of all of these policies just because they had Biden's name on it. And I think that there's a real danger that could happen if Mike Johnson and some of these guys get their way. Can't let that happen. No, I'm right there with you. But, as you were talking about, 2009 and the solar that, we were trying, Solyndra popped into my head. It's, for years, it's all I've heard, Solyndra. And I'm going, this is what you need. You need sound government policy, and you need strong, smart investment. And you need a plan to bring that. You just can't go, hey, we'd like to have it, and it appears. You actually have to have a way forward. You have to have a plan for it, and a way for it to actually work. And we've 100%. Finally done that. That's right. Decades late, I would argue, but we're finally moving. Yeah, that's right. And by the way, Solyndra might have been a failure, but there were so many successes out of that didn't get reported. One of them, Tesla. Tesla was nothing before the government investment that was made in the Recovery Act. And you can hate or love Elon Musk or whatever, but there is no disputing that Tesla was able to scale and is a very successful EV company in the United States now. And I have all sorts of disagreements with them, and I know you do too, but that was a massive success story out of that investment. And we're going to see many, many, many more like that down the road. Yeah, now I want to focus on that since you brought it up. because I have friends who believe that Elon Musk willed that out of sheer intestinal fortitude and determination, that he alone, Scott, was the birther of Tesla.
Yeah. Look, no doubt the dude is smart. All right. But he is not an automaker. Okay. He is not an automaker. I mean, he came out of PayPal, which is a payment app. He does not know how to manufacture an automobile. He was good at assembling a team, and they benefited from a massive capital infusion from the federal government and loan guarantees, and they were able to scale. And you look at them now, right? I'm sure that I see them all over the place. You probably see them too, and they're like ubiquitous. And again, I wish they were organized. I wish they had some better practices, but they put EV manufacturing on the map, and people are trying to catch up. And I think that's a good thing to create that competition.
No, I'm right there with you. But this narrative that gets spun quite often, that you've got this this gazillionaire who pulled himself up by his bootstraps from the depths of poverty, and because he's just so much smarter than everybody else and works so much harder. That is not the Musk story. Lots of government investment, lots of other people and their work that he took advantage of. There's a lot to this story other than he's Horatio Alger pulling himself up by his bootstraps.
Yeah, they like you to believe all of that. And believe me, I hope all of these companies are very successful that are spun up as a result of this investment. I also hope, and in fact, I know because of some of the policy writers that were attached to this, that there's a better chance the workers will be organized, will be paid well, that the factories will be built by workers that are being paid prevailing wage, and that they'll have child care plans. And all of that is because of the nature, and that all the materials will be made in America. And all of that is because of the kind of Bidenomics policies that were put into place as a part of this. That's worth remembering.
That is exactly the point. Scott, I appreciate the time, the expertise, the thoughts. Great stuff that you do over there at the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Hope folks will check out the website, AmericanManufacturing.org. Scott Paul, appreciate the time.
Hey, Rick, always great to be with you. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much, our good friend Scott Paul. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day that the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a decision that would be a blow to the cause of labor. Striving for the kind of major gains they had won in 1956, the 500,000 members of the United Steelworkers of America once again went out on strike. The steel industry was extremely profitable, and the workers demanded to share in the fruits of their labor. Management wanted the ability to introduce new technology and policies to cut hours and employees. The strike wore on for more than 100 days. President Dwight D. Eisenhower ordered the steelworkers back to the plants. He argued that the Taft-Hartley Act gave him the legal means to issue the order. A decade earlier, Congress had passed the Taft-Hartley Act over President Harry Truman's veto as a way to curtail union rights. The steelworkers protested the constitutionality of the law all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The union lost. In making its decision, the court referenced President Eisenhower's explanation of the impact of the strike, writing, quote, "The strike has closed 85% of the nation's steel mills, shutting off practically all new supplies of steel. Over 500,000 steel workers and about 200,000 workers in related industries, together with their families, have been deprived of their usual means of support. Present steel supplies are low, and the resumption resumption of full-scale production will require some weeks. If production is not quickly resumed, severe effects upon the economy will endanger the economic health of the nation. The next January, the union and management signed a new contract. The workers won a 7-cent an hour raise, a new automatic cost of living adjustment, improvements in their pension and health care benefits, and job protections against proposed automation.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So how many people are fed up with the tipping craze that's going on? It seems like everywhere you go now that people are going, hey, you throw in a little extra there for the workers, and you're going, isn't that what the employers are supposed to be doing? And look, I've said this a number of times before. I consider myself a fairly generous tipper. We're usually in the 25-30% range, maybe a little bit more when we go out to dinner, depending on the rounding. Because for me, it's really not about the service as much as it's about just how easy the math is. And I know that's sad, but like the other night, we went out to dinner and to a really expensive place at the Hollywood casinos, because we went to go see this lantern thing, and dinner was like $90. So I just made 120. So it was like a 33% tip, which I think is reasonable. It's good. Not horrible. But the guy did a good job. I mean, he was a good waiter. Everything was nice. Everything was good. All that. But when you go to the pretzel factory to get a pretzel from the counter, do you have to tip just them putting it in a bag and ringing it up? And I don't think so. I think they should be paid a fair wage. I think they should be able to make a living wage off of the work that they do, and not have to do the tip thing. And it turns out Americans are on board with this. In fact, there has been a survey done, a new report out that's shedding some light. They point out that 63% of Americans are overwhelmed by tipping requests. Look, we're going to a football game on Monday. I'm going up to Buffalo to see the Broncos play, and you're going to go buy a beer at the concession stand, and they're going to turn the little pad around and want you to tip for just pouring the beer. And you go, well, you do that at a bartender, and you go, yeah, but that's not how it had been. And this is where people are getting tired of it. So you have 3/4 of the people right now, 75% of people are ready to eliminate tipping in favor of a higher minimum wage. 62% would pay higher prices if they didn't have to tip. 2 in 3 would do away with tipping altogether. And I've said for a long time, tips are supposed to be, this is what was explained to me, were supposed to be if you went above and beyond. If you provided exceptional service, it was above everything else. The bill should include your labor, should include a reasonable wage, and that's the employer's fault. What has happened in this country, and this is the angering and frustrating part, and I brought this up to my daughter, who had worked in a restaurant for a while, just to get her sense of it. And she brought up the fact that, wage theft in the tipping is just rampant. Every employer that she'd worked for, there had been questions of them stealing tips. And if that's how if that's how waitresses and waiters are making their living off of your generosity, and a large portion of it doesn't go to the person that you're being generous to, that's infuriating. And look, I've told this story before. My wife's going to roll her eyes because she always does. But the first time I found out about wage theft in the tip thing was, my wife was a volunteer guide at a trail, riding horses and stuff. And I had volunteered as a big brother for a number of years, and I took the kid to go horseback riding or mule riding, whichever it is. And at the end of the thing, they give you an envelope and they say, here, if you enjoyed the ride, give your guide a tip. So, I was kind of taken by my eventually to be wife. So I left a sizable tip, like the entire cost plus of the ride. Yes, she was that good. and it wasn't for years later down the road that I brought that up. I go, so, did that have anything to do with it? She never got the tip. Never got it. Evidently, the employer would take all the tips and put it into a pool that they would pocket and then claim to give the full-time people a week's vacation. So they were stealing all of this money. I would argue more than a week's vacation. And as she told me, she goes, look, as I handed her the envelope, the employer was watching to make sure she turned it in. Because, well, I'm sure he knew what kind of a sucker I was. But he knew there was money in it for him. I'm against it. I want to hear your thoughts. Back after this.
Authorities are issuing a stern warning for the bushfire season.
Australia braces for El Nino to intensify already dangerous bushfires this year. October 2023 was the hottest October on record. Plus,
look, guys, we're announcing historic investment in America's railroads. I've been talking about this for a long time, I know. Finally, we're getting it done.
President Biden unveils nation's largest investment in rail infrastructure in 50 years.
All of those stories and other ones that will be ignored by the mainstream corporate media, straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We may have had a hot summer, but I just went trick-or-treating with my kids, and it was like, the low that evening was 29 degrees.
So climate change is over. Thank God fall is here, Congressman Andy Ogles, Republican from Tennessee. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, don't tell Congressman Ogles about what happened in October. It'll surprise and shock him.
Yes, the Earth just had its hottest October on record by a large margin since record-keeping began in the mid-1800s.
But it was 29 degrees when Andy Ogles went trick-or-treating.
That's according to preliminary data from European forecasters. October 2023 was the fifth month in a row to set a new monthly global heat record, meaning that 2023 is now a lock to finish as the hottest year ever recorded on the planet. Berkeley Earth climate scientist Zeke Housefather warns that we are still pretty early in the current El Nino cycle, and its full climate warming effects are still yet to come. Global temperatures are likely to hit new records in 2024.
Oy.
In Australia, bushfire season is off to a roaring start, with fire crews battling more than 1,000 destructive wildland fires in Queensland over just the last 2 weeks. Ranchers have been urged to sell their cattle herds because the ongoing bushfire emergency is also exacerbating a national feed shortage.
Wow.
On ABC Australia, Emergency Services Minister Stephen Dawson warned residents that El Nino is going to intensify hot and dry conditions in the already massive bushfire season.
There's no doubt that we are we're having a change in climate, and what we're seeing this year is fires that are earlier. They will be more frequent. We will see a long, hot and dry summer.
Here in the U.S., a new report from the Senate Joint Economic Committee calculates that wildfires, exacerbated by man-made climate change, cost the U.S. between $400 and $900 billion every year. The comprehensive analysis calculated costs from property damage, economic losses, watershed pollution, and other long-term factors. The Senate committee warns the estimates are likely an undercount of the true total cost of wildfires in the United States.
Oh, I hope Congressman Ogles doesn't hear about that.
Speaking of, in politics, the Republican majority in the U.S. House passed a bill along party lines to slash the budget of the Environmental Protection Agency by nearly 40%, gutting funds for state and local water systems and rescinding parts of the Democrats' landmark climate law that help low-income communities address air and water pollution.
Oh, no. Let's pretend that's actually going to be taken up by the Senate, passed there, and and signed by the president.
Well, House Republicans know that the pro-fossil fuel bill won't pass in the U.S. Senate, but they pushed it through anyway. One of 12 must-pass spending bills to avert a government shutdown in a little over a week.
Prepare for government shutdown.
Meanwhile, President Biden on Monday announced $16 billion in new investment in rail transit infrastructure repairs and upgrades, the largest since the creation of Amtrak more than 50 years ago. Funding from the infrastructure law will go to 25 projects along the aging critical commuter network of the Northeast Corridor, the busiest rail line in the United States, to reduce traffic congestion and cut air pollution and carbon emissions that drive global warming.
Fully electrified trains on this corridor emit 83% less greenhouse gases, by the way, than driving your car. It matters. It's like taking 500,000 automobiles off the road every day.
And finally, a very big win in Michigan for things that breathe. Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer is expected to sign sweeping climate and environmental legislation passed by the state legislature's Democratic majority. That includes reaching 100% clean electricity by 2040 and funding to boost electric grid stability, prevent blackouts, and lower energy costs for consumers by expanding cheaper renewable energy. The law also includes critical reforms to the clean energy permitting process to counter the coordinated fossil fuel funded anti-renewable disinformation campaign in rural areas of the state that have been working to block farmers and rural governments from installing renewable energy.
Things that breathe?
Yep.
You mean people that breathe?
Everything that breathes.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.brandblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Jane sent me an email yesterday that had a clip in it from one of those, I think Newsmax, OAN, one of those right-wing cable news outlets, and the clip was basically saying just how horrible everything is, how we're being taxed. Every dollar that we earn, the government's taking. I think his number was like 60 cents out of every dollar, which is kind of ridiculous. But hey, he had a twisted math and a whole bunch of graphs and arrows and a whole bunch of things, basically telling you that you only get to keep 40 cents of your dollar, of your hard-earned dollar. And it gave me the vibe of 2010. The Tea Party thing, trying to restoke that anger over taxes. While our Republican Congress is trying to defund a good portion of the IRS who wanted to go after the rich people who have been cheating the tax system for so long. But hey, got to stoke that fear. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to reach out to somebody who probably knows a lot more than that guy does, and maybe share some thoughts on how progressive is our tax code. And how much do we spend? That's why I've asked our good friend Mateus Fernango to come talk with us. Mateus is an economics professor there at Bucknell University. Mateus, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
So I sent you the clip of this guy going on this rant about how every dollar, Mateus, 61 cents is paid in taxes. Is that accurate?
Well, it's on your first dollar. You have to remember that the marginal tax rates. As income goes up, at some point you stop paying sort of taxes, so to speak, and the same goes for payroll taxes and whatnot. So once you compute all of those things, it all depends. The very wealthy pay way less than that. It is an average. As an average, it doesn't say much. The tax rate in the United States for the developed countries, if you look at the developed countries, in Western Europe and comparable sort of economies, we pay relatively low levels of taxes. So we're at the low end of the tax spectrum.
But they also get health care and retirement security.
Yes, and the spending and the public spending is much less too. So we are, contrary to what they would make you believe, that we have a gigantic, very intrusive state. We have a relatively small state that spends not too much and does not provide a very extensive, safety net for the public. And that it doesn't tax much, and the tax, I should say, part of the story there was a suggestion that our tax system is too progressive, and of course the tax system is somewhat progressive. So after taxes, we have a little bit less inequality than we would have before taxes. So it is progressive in that sense. Yes, sure. We tax more the very wealthy than we tax the public income taxes. So, there is a line that it's very common in Fox News. Not that I watch it too much, but and it's very typical of conservative economists. They come out and say, 50% of people don't pay taxes or something along those lines, and it's obviously it's income tax that they mean, because the poor do pay, the working class pays, as that guy was showing. If you pay payroll taxes, and that would be the largest sort of chunk for most working people, and then you pay obviously sales taxes, and so once you look at that, the poor pay considerably more than the very wealthy. So I think there are two things that are important in this. One is understand that although the system is, progressive, it's not particularly strongly progressive as in other parts of the advanced economies. And the problems that we have, the problems with the economy, the inequality that has increased brutally and, since the 80s, is associated to the fact that our tax system is now considerably less progressive than it used to be. So when you look at the history of the income tax is a thing that had to be fought. It wasn't, it was like the 8-hour, day. It was something that the working class fought for, because it was an idea equivalent today of taxing the rich. And the rich said, no, the income tax is unconstitutional. And an amendment had to be passed in order to guarantee the income tax. And it only really became a relatively high income tax with the Second World War. And it goes to, 90% of GDP for the marginal tax dollar. So it's not your first dollar that paid that humongous sort of, that's what people forget. It's your marginal tax dollar. It's above a very, very, very high sort of level. It's for people with very high incomes. And so when you think of that, I always say, I ask, and I think I told this story in your program before, but, I ask kids, tell me the name of billionaires, equivalent to billionaires, they were millionaires back then, of the Gilded Age. And they'll say all the names. They know names. They know Carnegies, they know Morgans, they know,
Vanderbilts, sure. Yeah,
Vanderbilts, and, they know their, Rockefellers. And I say, give me names of, our billionaires now. And they know, all of the, the Bezos and the, whatever, the Bill Gates and so on and so forth of our era. Ask, give me the name of a billionaire or a very wealthy millionaire, whatever it was at that time of the 50s and 60s. And they don't have any names. And they don't have any names. I think I told you the joke. The one I like is the kid that said Hugh Hefner, but, he wasn't that sort of a millionaire. But, there weren't.
He was rich in other ways, though.
Yes, he was rich in other ways. A rich life he led. But but the point is, there weren't, and that's a reason why we call this a new Gilded Age. So it is a new Gilded Age. So that's number one. So the fact that the tax system was more progressive, that we did tax the rich more, was also associated to the fact that we didn't have those billionaires. And the other side of the coin is that we had a stronger, more vital middle class. That middle class wasn't, it was a middle class that were blue-collar workers that, had a high school sort of diploma and had gone to work in manufacturing. essentially. So a good chunk of the middle class was dead, working class middle class, not a relatively wealthy upper middle class that it's very separated and distant from the working poor these days, we can say. So the cohesion and that we had socially in many ways was associated to the fact that we had a more progressive tax system back then. So that was eroded, started with what? With Reagan. So the tax rates had already come somewhat down to something like 70%. And by the time of Reagan, they reduced to less than 30%. So they are in the 20s. And they managed to bring it a little bit back up, with Clinton to the 30s. And then, of course, Bush brought it back down. And then Obama brought it back up. And then Trump brought it back down, and so on and so forth. But we were oscillating there. It's in the 30s. So that's the story there. So the story is that we don't pay a lot of taxes. The wealthy pay less taxes. And that has had a significant impact on the working class. But, on top of that, so it's not just that the inequality that I think comes with that. I was going to say something, but now I'm blocking what I had another sort of topic, but I said two things, but I'm blocking the second. I apologize.
No, but look, I was just explaining this to my daughter just the other day, oddly enough, that, back in the 50s, we had a very progressive tax code. Every $2,000, the tax rate went up a little bit, just incrementally up until, I think it was $200,000 a year is what triggered the top marginal tax rate of 92%. But you paid that little increment all the way up. And to your point, the first dollar is the least taxed, and it's that one over 200,000 that got the 92% tax rate. And I argued to her, I said, look, we didn't have the billionaires, as you pointed out. The money that was being made was put into factories, was put into higher wages, better benefits, was put into philanthropy, building schools or hospitals or other things if they didn't want the government to take the money. But it was being used in the community. Now what we've done, thanks to Reagan and these massive tax breaks, is we've created hoarders.
And the other thing was tax havens. The other thing is they don't pay taxes. So the story here is, look, Romney's father, Republican Michigan, governor back when, George Romney. He when he was a candidate for the presidency, he opened up his tax accounts. He showed. I remember this because Romney gave us 2 years of taxes when he was a presidential candidate. His father had given apparently 12 years. So he had given he opened up his accounts. Why did Romney give us 2 years? Because knowing he was going to run for the presidency, he being a party-trained Republican, one that tries to look normal, he went on to pay some taxes so that it looked like he was actually paying more taxes or as much as regular folk pay of taxes, so that they could look at it. And it was whatever it was, 17% of his income, something like that. But that was sort of an arranged thing. Trump, you have to give it to him. He tried to hide completely this. He never gave you the taxes. And there are many reasons. Perhaps he doesn't have the money, so it's not necessary. But it is okay. It has been sort of, because we know that they do have the money in tax havens and that they don't pay taxes. So that's the norm. So not only they pay less taxes because we reduced and created all sorts of mechanisms for that to do that. But on top of that, we have deregulated so much the global economy that the very wealthy, not just in the US, globally, can go around and not pay taxes. And so who pays taxes? The suckers that, live from wages. And those can be taxed very easily because, they tax it, directly. You don't even get the money. So and again, I think that there is another important thing that, it's not, I always say, I don't like pay, comes April, I'm not the biggest fan of the IRS and the tax system. But the problem is, how are we going to have a society in which the things that we do need, the public schools, I went to vote today. So, how are you going to have decent public schools to educate your kids? How are you going to have the hospitals that, that can, serve you in an emergency, that when you're in old age, can provide you with the minimum things that you will need. And so people forget that you're getting something in exchange for those, tax dollars that you're paying. And so that's the part, the solidarity. If you are part of society, the myth of the conservative story is that society doesn't exist, that we're all just individuals and then we don't care for each other. And that's the dangerous, I think, sort of idea. So if you live in society, part of the sort of, social norms is that we do care for each other. And if we do care for each other, the taxes are the way that we care for each other. And it's not just the taxes, I say, it's how we spend the money. It's how we spend the money. You see in the government what the government is trying to do. And I should say, in favor of Biden, he's trying to switch some of the things that we used to spend money, that we stop spending money on infrastructure. So he put, for example, we're going to spend on public transportation and on trains, on bringing back some, jobs, manufacturing, good jobs back home. Those are the things, because it shows where your commitments are. So how do we build community? It's how you spend the money and who you tax. So if you tax the wealthy and you spend on things that are, community building endeavors, that's a government that works for, the working people.
No, and you're spot on. So the last question I have is, when you look at this piece that I sent you and you think about what the point of that is, who are they convincing and what are they convincing that person of? What goes through your mind?
Well, they're trying to cheaply tell this person that you're being robbed, that, they're taking away 40 cents out of every dollar that you have to earn there, with your work, and they're robbing you. And again, we talked about this. It's the advantage of the conservative sort of stories is they have simple slogans. And it's very hard to tell the person that those 40 cents are what allowed, most of them to have a retirement at all. That, that their parents are, not necessarily, because they have Medicare and Social Security, they do have a decent life in old age, that they can send their kids to school. So all of that is omitted, and sort of, and so it's very hard to have a simple slogan that tells this person, look, you're better off because you're paying those 40 cents. You're getting actually more back than you're putting in, and there is a part of your life that you're putting in more than you're getting out, but there'll be a part that you'll take considerably more out than you're getting in, and so that is lost in most people. And so it is hard. So there is a clear target. The target here is the working class. The conservatives have been very good at, faking it, that they are on the side of the working poor, and that a system with no taxes would favor the poor. But at the end of the day, that means that if you have a problem, if you want to, health insurance, if you want education, you'll have to pay it with your dollars, and you won't be able to pay it. So the 40 cents pay for stuff that if you have to go to the private market, you cannot get. Yeah. So those 40 cents are subsidizing relatively cheap, good quality, and we still have it. It's not as good as it should be, but we still have decent education. We have decent health, and those things are paid with those 40 cents, and they're subsidized. It's cheap. You're getting it cheap. That's the story.
There you go. Mateus, I appreciate the time. Always good talking with you, my friend.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Our good friend Mateus Verdango. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, the simple response here, and Mateus is right, it's the outrage candy. It's to get you to hate the fact that I shouldn't have to pay taxes. And, you know, the argument is well, maybe you shouldn't. Rich people don't do it. And this is one of those things where you go, maybe, I don't know, here's a thought, maybe they should. Maybe we should be taxing the very wealthy. I know Republicans are doing their best to gut the IRS funding that Biden got put in there to ensure we've got enough IRS agents to go and dig into some of these really complicated returns. But what these right-wingers do masterfully is it's the low-hanging fruit. It's just to make you mad. It's the outrage candy. It's the daily outrage because they're exposing the tax. And here's the thing. The Senate Budget Committee on Wednesday, they're going to be exposing the wealthy tax cheats hearing. And the title of the hearing, Fairness and Fiscal Responsibility, Cracking Down on Wealthy Tax Cheats. It's going to happen at the Dirksen Senate Office Building on Wednesday. And it's, for me, I'm looking forward to this because I think, maybe there's an opportunity to do some pointing out that, these rich people have been walking away from paying taxes for a very long time. And there's that guy, and they're honest about it. I mean, this is the thing that gets me about Trump. He was honest. He said, look, of course I take all of these tax breaks. Of course I take all of this, I take every deduction possible. Of course I do, because I'm smart. And also we lobby for them so that we don't have to pay taxes. There's that guy, that rich dad, poor dad guy. He says it all the time. Rich people don't pay taxes because they don't make income. They don't go to work at a job. And this is where, if you want some real outrage, it's the fact that your boss, we keep saying, well, the boss is paying all these taxes. No, he's not. Got one of the lowest corporate tax rates we've had, at least in my lifetime. And probably in the last, 75 years. It has never been a better time to be rich than right now because, the inheritance tax is almost gone. You've got opportunities to hoard money overseas and not pay taxes. I mean, it's really quite remarkable what they've been able to do and then con us into saying taxes are bad. And I like what Mateus said. He goes, look, income tax was something that working people fought for, to make sure that the wealth class who was hoarding all of the wealth, who was taking all of the all of their labor and hoarding it. And this is one of those moments where maybe we need to be reclaiming this. And I've been saying for a long time, I want to go back to the good socialist president David Eisenhower's tax code. Because, and look, I've known some people who were in business back in that era. You had a corporate tax rate of 56%. Not 15, 56%. It's how we paid for education. It's how we paid for infrastructure. Eisenhower had, at that point, the largest infrastructure bill in the history of this country. Built the highway system. How'd he do it? Taxing people. I'm an old school tax and spend Republican, evidently, because I believe you tax rich people and you spend it on things you need. But today's GOP, and look, the GOP of my lifetime has never been about raising revenue. It's always been about privatizing, give it to the privateers because they're smart, they know what to do with it, and they do. They make more for themselves. This is one of these important issues. So we'll see what happens out of this hearing. I'm kind of interested in seeing where things go. A lot of this stuff is just dog and pony show, But hopefully there's some policy that comes out of this. Hopefully there's a way to go, hey, you know what? You're right, rich dad, poor dad. You're right. Rich people don't pay income taxes. Maybe we start taxing their wealth. Maybe the stuff that they're hoarding, maybe we take a look at that. Maybe we ensure that you pay something. It is, as Mateus pointed out, it's the price of admission to being in this country. If you want to be part of society, the price of admission is paying for it. Now, look, we do raise a lot of revenue off of working people. Where does it go? Well, we can fight over how it's spent, and I would argue our military budget kind of big. I'd like to see more spent on butter than guns. I'd like to see more spent on education. I'd like to see more spent on society as a whole. But what we get from the other side, and I think Mateus hit it perfectly, you've got to believe there is no society. There's none of the things that we kind of take for granted. So I'm interested to see what comes out of the big hearing. Fairness and fiscal responsibility, cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. Should be interesting. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program? Make sure you grab the podcast. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day that the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a decision that would be a blow to the cause of labor. Striving for the kind of major gains they had won in 1956, the 500,000 members of the United Steelworkers of America once again went out on strike. The steel industry was extremely profitable, and the workers demanded to share in the fruits of their labor. Management wanted the ability to introduce new technology and policies to cut hours and employees. The strike wore on for more than 100 days. President Dwight D. Eisenhower ordered the steelworkers back to the plants. He argued that the Taft-Hartley Act gave him the legal means to issue the order. A decade earlier, Congress had passed the Taft-Hartley Act over President Harry Truman's veto as a way to curtail union rights. The steelworkers protested the constitutionality of the law all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The union lost. In making its decision, the court referenced President Eisenhower's explanation of the impact of the strike, writing, quote, "The strike has closed 85% of the nation's steel mills, shutting off practically all new supplies of steel. Over 500,000 steel workers and about 200,000 workers in related industries, together with their families, have been deprived of their usual means of support. Present steel supplies are low, and the resumption of full-scale production will require some weeks. If production is not quickly resumed, severe effects upon the economy will endanger the economic health of the nation." The next January, the union and management signed a new contract. The workers won a 7-cent an hour raise, a new automatic cost of living adjustment, improvements in their pension and health care benefits, and job protections against proposed automation.
Hear it? What's that sound? Ooh, it's Washington's revolving door, allowing corporate interests to come directly inside Congress to pervert public policy. That door is now spinning fast because there's a new boss operator in Congress. He's Mike Johnson, who was recently unanimously chosen by Republicans to be their Speaker of the House. He's a corporate wet dream, an affable ultra-conservative from Shreveport who consistently backs the plutocratic agenda of big business over workers, the poor, consumers, and most other Americans. Moreover, Johnson maintains it was God who elevated him to his new position of authority, and that the Bible will guide his policy views. Well, selected parts of the Bible. Don't expect much mercy, justice, and peacemaking from this hardcore laissez-faire ideologue. For example, guess who he's chosen to be his director of policy? Big Pharma's top Washington lobbyist. Dan Ziegler has been the chief influence peddler for a dozen multi-billion-dollar drug giants, including Eli Lilly, Merck, and Pfizer. Ziegler has furiously opposed every legislative effort to stop the rampant price gouging. even though 90% of Americans are clamoring for Congress to clamp down on pharmaceutical ripoffs. But we 90%ers don't control the revolving door. Mike does. Johnson piously cloaks himself in both the Christian gospel and libertarian myth of free markets. Yet he has consistently pushed government action to restrict competition and protect drug monopolies. Now, in his first substantive action as Speaker, he is literally bringing Big Pharma inside to sit with him in the seat of legislative power. This is Jim Hightower saying drug pricing reform will soon come up for a vote in Congress. Before Mike's lobbyist buddy tells him what to do, let's demand that he reread the Sermon on the Mount.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So, looks like potentially a strike out in Las Vegas, as tens of thousands of Las Vegas Strip hotel workers at 18 casinos could go on strike. I guess, Friday, I guess Thursday is the deadline of as I understand it, and here to share some thoughts on maybe what's going on. I think we've got Jennifer Marshall. She's a food service worker at the Paris Casino. She's a member of the Culinary Workers Union Local 226 out there. Jennifer, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. This is Bethany Kahn from the Culinary Union. We're in negotiations, so it's a bit crazy.
No, I get it.
Jennifer's in the subcommittee right now, and I can't pull her, but I'm happy to chat with you, and I can find someone else too.
All right, Bethany. Just where are we? What's going on? Where are we?
So we're in negotiations right now for 35,000 workers in Las Vegas. We're literally in negotiations right now, and the Culinary Union has set a strike deadline of Friday at 5 a.m. And if we can't reach a deal, then workers are going to walk. And we're fighting for the best contract ever, highest wage increases ever, safety, technology language, to make sure workers aren't left behind. And we're trying to make sure that workers can thrive and do more than just, survive.
Yeah, I mean the old bread and roses frame. Bread, yes, but roses too. Yeah, we want to be able to get our necessities, but a couple of nice things every once in a while. We'd like that too, right?
Yeah, and we feel that workers deserve that because Culinary Union members comprise of a majority of Nevada's middle class, and we want to thrive. These companies are making record profits. They're making billions of dollars, and workers are working more than one job. Our jobs are good union jobs, but since the pandemic, we've seen that more and more workers are working two jobs and their one job. Like, workers are feeling like they're doing way more work. Or we've seen that workers are literally doing two jobs to make ends meet, and that is not right.
Yeah, and coming out of the pandemic, and again, I don't think we talk about the pandemic enough and the frames that came out of it, the people, being, essential and frontline heroes and all those things, only to say, now it's over, going back to no longer being essential or heroes, and we want to cheat you out of wages in crummy conditions. So it sounds to me like they want to go back to 2019.
Well, I don't know what they want to go back to, but, since the pandemic, I think they got addicted to their profits. They cut a lot of labor costs during the pandemic, and workers stepped up. We sacrificed. We did more work. We did more work to make sure that the companies would stay open, that business could survive. And now that the companies are back, and they're back more than 100%, they're making all this money. We want to make sure that workers can thrive and aren't left behind. Right? Since the pandemic, the biggest transfer of wealth has been happening in every industry across the country, and workers in Las Vegas are standing up to make sure we're not left behind.
So November 10th is the deadline, as I understand it, right?
That's right. So it's Friday at 5 a.m. Pacific.
And, that would basically shut the Strip down, no?
Well, 35,000 workers at 18 casinos. So it's MGM Resorts, all about 9 of their casinos, or 8 or 9. Caesars Entertainment, same, and then Wynn Resort. So 18 different casinos. It's a majority. I would say it's a majority of the casinos on the Strip and a majority of Culinary Union members. The Culinary Union represents 60,000 workers, and 35,000 are up to strike on Friday.
And this is, again, nobody wants a strike. This is one of those things I say all the time. It's the last arrow in the quiver. So we must be getting to that end of the rope, so to speak.
Yes, and I actually have Aretha Wilder, who's a cocktail server at the Flamingo, who stepped out of subcommittee. Aretha, do you want to tell us why you're willing to go on strike on Friday?
Yes, I will. Hello?
Yeah, please tell us.
Yes, sir, I'm willing to go on strike for my family, for my benefits, so I don't have to work 2 and 3 stations, to put money into my benefits package, for safety. Ever since the pandemic, we've been working 2 and 3 stations. Our hours have been cut. We don't have enough workers. Lots of things.
Yeah. No, and talking with Bethany, these casinos are making record profits off of your labor. It's only sane and rational that you should share in the fruits of your labor.
Not only are they making record profits, but they're making record profits and they're bragging about it, as they're not, at the same time, not willing to share those profits.
Isn't that amazing? I've listened to a lot of these earnings calls over the last 2 years, where these companies are talking about how much wealth that they're pocketing and how much they're transferring to the shareholders. And yet, when they come to the bargaining table, and I'm sure you're seeing this firsthand, they're crying poverty. We couldn't possibly give you an extra quarter or 50 cents because we've got shareholders to feed.
Sir, I've been working at the Flamingo Hotel since I was 21 years old. I've been there for 32 years, my entire adult life.
Wow.
And I believe that I deserve a fair share. I deserve to not have to work 2 stations. I deserve to have them not tell me I'm not putting money into your pension, or we're not going to raise your pay enough to you so you can afford this astronomical rent that we have now, and all of these other things. Ever since the pandemic, the gas has got everything, right. And we can't keep up. And now we work twice as hard, and now they're making twice as much money, and they're telling us we can't have any of it.
No, and that's, this is not just you. It's a lot of people across the country who feel the same way. But fortunately, you have the ability to sit down and negotiate for this. Was it always like this? I mean, you said you've spent your entire adult life working in this industry. Was it always like this? Have they always been this stingy?
No, no, sir. Actually, there have been so many times since I have been employed there that we've just not only have they've been reasonable, and more than that, there's been several times we've helped them out of situations. I was here during 9/11, and we had to help the companies, and we were in a partnership, and we held back our raises and our benefits package, or after the mass shooting, or after the pandemic. Every time, or when the companies went bankrupt a couple times. We stuck it out. We deferred things. We helped build the company back up. We brought the people back. People come back all the time and say, "Hey, Aretha, I haven't seen you since last year." No one says that about my manager.
I'm sure not. But what's
Yeah.
interesting to me, Aretha, and this is the interesting part of this, and I'm glad you brought this up. It's amazing how when things are not going well for the companies, they know where to go to get bailed out. But when things are going really well for them, they forget all about the people who helped them out in their time of need.
Yeah, when after 9/11, they gave several speeches about how we're all in it together, and they were telling the truth. I mean, they were suffering. We knew they were suffering. We were suffering with them, and we helped them because we had to. We have a symbiotic relationship. We can't survive without them, and they need to recognize that they can't survive without us, sir.
Yeah, well, not for now, because eventually I'm sure they want to go to robots or automated kiosks or whatever, which I got to think is part of what you're negotiating to ensure that you have jobs in the future and aren't automated away, right?
Absolutely, because if they could already, they'd have a robot doing all and every aspect of my job.
And you're not alone. I keep seeing all of these videos of this job being automated, and eventually corporate America will do away with all working people, which is why I think it's important, much like the UAW did, much like the Teamsters did, got it in their contract that there will be a sane, rational transition, and that working people aren't going to take it on the chin as technology comes online.
Yeah, we've seen all those sci-fi movies.
Yeah, so let me ask you, your coworkers. I mean, you've been around a while. You're probably the one people look to. What's the sense right now? Do you feel that on the 10th that there may be a strike? Are people eager? What seems to be the sense?
The sense that I feel are that the workers are willing to strike. They feel that their backs are against the wall. The companies are asking in some instances for, a shorter work week or short, to reduce hours. We feel like our backs are against the wall. We can't go backwards and we can't stay right here.
Yeah.
If we stay right here, we'll sink. We'll have we can't go anywhere. It's not like, San Francisco or something where we can live in another place and then come here to work. We're here.
Now this is your industry.
We live here, and we have to be able to afford to live here. It shouldn't be that I'm a fourth generation Las Vegan and I can't afford to live here. This isn't Hawaii. We're not an island. This is absurd.
No, I'm with you on that. And look, this is the reason that you sit down at the table and you negotiate for this stuff. So what? And I don't want you to get into all the nuts and bolts, but what seems to be the sense on the other side? Are they dug in? Is it going to take a strike? Because I say sometimes, nobody wants to go on strike, and I'm sure nobody's eager to have to do this. But sometimes, as you've pointed out, your back's against the wall and you have no other choice. It's kind of like the last arrow in the quiver to jumpstart negotiations and show the other side you're serious. Do you think they believe you're serious?
I'm optimistic. We'll see. We'll see tonight whether or not they are if they're for real or not.
What's it take to get this done? What are we looking for?
Just a compromise on various issues. We're getting close, but we're not quite there yet. Hopefully we will be by the end of our discussions today.
Well, I wish you the best. Look, I hope you don't have to go on strike, but if you do, one day longer, one day stronger, we want to keep in touch with you. Bethany, I appreciate you taking time for us. I wish you guys the best. Good luck, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. God bless you, sir.
Look, as I said, nobody wants to go on strike. Nobody wants that kind of disruption in their family life. Nobody wants that kind of disruption at work. But sometimes you're left with no choice. And you heard her say, they feel their backs are against the wall. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1990. That was the day that Lemuel Rickett Boulware died. Boulware had a notorious reputation with labor leaders. He was the vice president for employee relations for General Electric during the 1950s. He took the lead on labor for the company in 1947, a year after a 17-week bitter strike at General Electric. Determined not to have another such strike, Boulware cultivated his own brand of labor relations. He advocated doing extensive research and offering what he called a fair, firm offer at the bargaining table. This meant the company would essentially give their final offer on the first day of bargaining and hold nothing back for future negotiations. This take-it-or-leave-it approach came to be known as Boulwareism. Other companies copied his tactic. Boulware came to be regarded as a master negotiator by corporate leaders. He was known for writing internal communications to GE employees with catchphrases advocating management's position on labor issues. In 1969, at the AFL-CIO convention in Atlantic City, Paul Jennings, the president of the Industrial Union of Electrical Workers, derided Boulware's tactics. Jennings described it as telling the workers what they're entitled to and trying to shove it down their throats. Boulware once described fair share unionism as wrong in principle and bad in practice. He is credited with helping to move Ronald Reagan to a more conservative approach to labor. Reagan went to work as a spokesperson for General Electric in 1954. At the time, Reagan had been a Democrat and also president of his union, the Screen Actors Guild. During his time at GE, he moved increasingly to the radical right, especially on labor issues. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. And look, you know, I listened to the folks with the culinary union. Look, 35,000 people going on, potentially on strike on Friday. No small feat. And you know, the culinary union is one of my favorite, one of the most militant groups in the country. And look, if they say they're going on strike, they will. And this is one of those weird moments. And I mentioned it a second ago. I've listened to a lot of these earnings calls. I've listened to oil executives talk about, you know, how much record profits they're making quarter over quarter, but gas prices are through the roof. And they're not going to drill anymore to help bring that down. No, because they like it right where it is. And I've listened to these corporations, you know, throughout the last 2 years talk about how, you know, they're maximizing shareholder value. And I can't help but remember, I think it was August 19th, 2019, that the Business Roundtable came out with their edict that it was no longer about maximizing shareholder wealth. No. It was now they cared about their communities. They cared about all the stakeholders, the communities, the workers, their customers. Yeah, they cared about all of those suckers. And then they had the pandemic to prove it and didn't. So are we surprised coming out of the pandemic that they've been hoarding and gouging and really the cause of the inflation that we're suffering through? Look, you know, it's real. Rent prices are way too high. Why? Because we've got hedge fund managers and private equity firms buying up all of the rental properties and jacking up the rent. Why? Because they can. We got gas prices still way too high. Why? Because they can. Food prices way too high. Why? Again, I think you know the response. This could be like a religious moment where we do that, you know, I'll say something out and you just shout out because they can. Because that's where we are. All of this stuff is happening because we've given so much power to corporate America. So when you look at an industry like the casino industry in Las Vegas right now, who's wildly, wildly profitable, saying, gee, you know, the people who actually do the work that make us all this money, yeah, we'd like to share. You know, but you know, we're in defense of the market, in defense of what might happen in the future. We just can't possibly share. But when times get tough, and the UAW is a perfect example of this. You know, when times get tough, they know where to come for concessions. They know who to go to say, hey, can you spare a little? Can you tighten the belt a little bit? Can you sacrifice just a little to help us out here? And of course the workers always do. It's a learned response. Corporate America knows. Yeah, of course we can go back to the workers and claw back some of those wage gains and destroy some of those health benefits, make them a little bit worse, a little cheaper for us. And you go, when do we say enough? And this is where these workers have to be in this moment. They did help. They did sacrifice. They did give back. They did give concessions. And now that the coffers are full, the casinos don't want to share. It's like the big three auto companies going, we made $250 billion profit over the last decade, but the future is uncertain. Yeah, the future is uncertain, but you know what I'm certain of? That if bad things happen in the future, you're going to come back to those very workers. You're going to say, oh, gee, times are tough. We're going to have to claw some of that back. We know that. So it's one of those moments where you go, when times are good, you share the wealth. When times are tough, you share the sacrifice. But they don't want to do that. When times are tough, you sacrifice. When times are good, we'll profit. Something fundamentally wrong with that. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So I got a bunch of emails, and I want to clarify where we're going, what we're doing, and why. We, as of December 1st, will be our last broadcast on live terrestrial radio. We've been doing live radio for 18 years now plus. And look, it's run its course. We've reached the growth potential that is out there. There's nowhere for us to go to expand our reach and to do the things that we want to do. So an offer and an idea came up that we're gonna expand into television. We've been doing a TV program for a while, but we were going to put all of our effort into a free speech show, and that will run during their prime hours twice a day. So it's going to give us the opportunity to do the kind of show that we've always wanted to do, get off of the wheels, so to speak, and really put some effort into the kind of programming we want to do in the future. So free speech TV daily, we're going to be hitting that hard in the new year. That audio from the TV show we are going to offer to radio stations if they choose to air it. A lot of the stations that we're on currently, of the 50 some odd stations that we're on, they are going to pick up some form of the audio and air it. So we may not go away from terrestrial entirely, but we're just not going to be doing it live anymore. As someone who works 40 plus hours a week at a job and then comes and does this, these are long days. And with our revenue shortfalls, we had to make the decision, where is the best bang for our resources? Where do we reach the most people? And clearly television is where that is. A lot of funding sources have said, hey, radio's dead. And I'm sorry for everyone who's listening, but that's what the Democrats, that's what labor, that's what the left thinks of radio, which is why they're getting their butts kicked every day in messaging, because they don't want to compete in the talk radio space. And I've said this before, we're on a list of 100 talk shows. We made Talkers Magazine a heavy 100 list. Of the 100 top programs in the country, 95 of them hate working people, and are funded probably 10 times more than we've ever raised in any given year. So of course the message is going to get out in those spaces. But so that folks understand, we're not going away. We're expanding into places where we're going to be able to get the best reach and the best opportunities for the effort that we're putting in. I hate the fact that we're going away from talk radio. I hate the fact that we're leaving this time slot. I've loved my time doing this. I love interacting with people. It's been my passion for all these years. But this is a good move. This is a smart move in this moment. And this is where we're heading. I hope people will follow us. We will obviously be putting out the audio from the TV show for podcasts, and we're going to do a bunch of things that I've wanted to do for a while. I would like to do some more in-depth interview kind of stuff, specifically for podcast. We do want to get out on picket lines. We want to get out into doing events and stuff again. So we're going to have some really exciting stuff going on in 2024. And with it being an election year, being not tethered to this chair from 9 to 11 Eastern time every weeknight, going to give us some opportunities to do some fun and exciting stuff that we hope to bring back, not just to television, but also to our podcast and to our radio friends who are going to air the audio from that. You can still participate with the program, and this is, someone said, what, will we lose track of you? No, you can always email me. That's the easiest way. And we're also talking about, and we're in talks with the free speech folks, to doing a weekly call-in TV show. So for people who, hey, I want to call in and want to argue or whatever, we're working on that part of it. And look, there's some really exciting opportunities. So it's sad that we're leaving talk radio. Again, I've been doing this for 18 years. It's saddening. It's heartbreaking. But the opportunities I think that it's going to give us are going to be really, really exciting. But I want to hear your thoughts. Good idea, bad idea. Will I regret it? I'm vacillating. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If I've said something today, got under your skin, on your nerves, or made you think, you can tell me that too. Angry emails always to the top. Miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.